Hey, what's up, everyone? Man, I am so looking forward to this episode for this week's podcast. It's going to be a
Are you
lot of
kidding
fun.
me? Are you kidding me?
What?
Our rights are being taken away. There's suffering going on. Texas, Georgia, Florida, and you're just letting it happen. Your silence. That's enough. That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to
What
hear
are
is
you
your
talking?
silence. Your speech, your opinions offends me. Okay, you shouldn't even be allowed to speak. I don't even know why I'm friends with you.
You are an idiot.
I
And
am going to
you know,
report you and off to the gulag. You go.
oh, really? You're going to send me there?
I'll send you to the gulag.
Just for any random reason, just because you don't like the cut of my jib
I don't like your
or
opinion.
you don't like my
Diversity
opinion?
of
Okay.
opinion is not allowed. You have to conform or be cast out.
You know who you remind me of? You remind me of the very subjects that we're going to be talking about in this episode. And I am so freaking glad that we're going to have this guy on the show to talk about that and sit you down and put you in your place. Goodbye. Oh, don't do me any favors. All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sons of History podcast. I'm Dustin Bass.
And I'm Alan Wakim.
And I will tell you this, sir. It's good to have you again, finally, back in the studio.
Thank you. Yeah, because the last couple of times I had to operate from home for various reasons. Floods, mom. Floods, more moms.
How many moms you got?
Well, she's a handful. So.
Yeah, she is, yeah. Yeah, well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to thoroughly enjoy this episode. I can guarantee you, as I always guarantee in every episode, and I hope to God I haven't been wrong on any of our episodes. I'll tell you this, man, I have thoroughly enjoyed this second season thus far.
Yeah, I do too. It's definitely more structured. Whoever's planning this thing,
Whoever
really
is planning, wow,
definitely doing a pretty good
what
job.
a great person.
Yeah, well,
I don't know who it is. Yeah, I know the one who's not structuring. But I don't know who the one who is structuring.
I'm not the organizer. I'm just the talent.
You're just the talent. And it is lagging. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, wherever you're listening, and if you would do us a huge favor, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've gotten a lot of rating and reviews lately, which is awesome. So thank you to everyone who has left a rating and a review. And if you haven't yet and you enjoy the show, please, by all means, leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you think about the show. And speaking of the show, the new section of the show, which I have thoroughly enjoyed, is This Week in History. You ready for that?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let's see what the hell happened this week in history.
All right. Since mine, I looked at yours. Since mine took place, further into the past, I think I should go first.
Go for it.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. All right, now I'm hoping that these dates are correct because we're talking about antiquity. So I'd be October the 19th, 202 BC.
Before Christ?
Before Christ. Although they didn't know it at the time. That's not how they dated their years, but
It is now.
it is now. And we're going to stick with that.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, we're going to stick with that one. I know some people prefer a different method, but we'll stick with the BC since... That's what Western civilization's all about, is it not? All right, so the Battle of Zama, or Zama, I'm not sure what the pronunciation is, but it was part of the Second Punic War. Now, for those who might not be familiar, there were three major wars between Carthage, which is in modern-day Tunisia, and Rome. They were both competing powers in the Mediterranean Sea. And, the Punics were Phoenician. That's where they came from, modern-day Lebanon. So I don't know if you ever read the Aeneid. Did you ever read that?
I've read portions of it.
Okay. Did you get the one about Queen Dido?
No, but I do. Well, actually, I don't anymore. I hate her music now. But I
Are
used to
you
listen
kidding?
to it
No, her
quite often.
music. Her music's pretty good.
Back in the day when it first came out, I
Yeah.
was like, all right, I'm a fan. My brother would buy her albums,
Yeah.
but now I
She's
would
pretty.
rather throw up
Yeah.
than
Well,
listen to
yeah,
that.
some of
It's
her
right up there with
music's
Ace of Base. It just
But
might
I
as well
think
hang me.
she named herself. I'm going to call her Dido. I think she named herself after Queen Dido, who was from I think Tyre or maybe Sidon, but I'm pretty sure it was Tyre, Lebanon. And she created the town of or the city of Carthage. And Aeneas came in, and they were lovers, and then he jilted her. So that kind of set the tone for the hatred between the Carthaginians and the Romans. So now in this case, there was a previous war. In the Second Punic War, there was Hannibal, and he was famous for the elephants going over the Alps and attacking Rome. And there was the Battle of Cannae, which wiped out much of the Roman army. But then what had happened was that Rome sent a guy named Scipio Africanus. His real name was Publius Cornelius Scipio, and they called him Africanus. So on October the 19th, they met in North Africa, outside of Carthage. And now Hannibal Barca, he had about 40,000 men, and Scipio Africanus had about 35,000, and this included allies. But Hannibal had elephants. He had about 80 elephants, war elephants. So, in the past they had worked, but in this case, Scipio knew what to do. And when they charged the elephants, all his men did was get out of the way. Yeah, kind of like what you saw in, what was it, the Karate Kid 2, Get Out of the Way.
Yeah.
Is that the one? That's the one where they were in Hawaii. They said
Was
Okinawa.
it Hawaii or Japan?
It was filmed in It was filmed in Hawaii, but they said it was in Okinawa.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so they just got out of the way, and then there was attack after attack, and eventually the Carthaginians were defeated. Now, depending on the source, if you read Livy or Polybius, they both said of the 40,000, 20,000 were killed of the Carthaginians. 20,000 were killed, 20,000 were captured. Appian, he stated that it was about 25,000 Carthaginians killed. But regardless, it was a huge defeat for
Half your army.
Carthage. Yeah, it was a huge defeat for Carthage, and they set up these humiliating terms. Now Hannibal survived, and he kind of like jumped around to help people. He did become a
statesman,
Senate,
right?
statesman, senator, something in Carthage. The part of the terms was that Carthage could not go to war unless given permission from Rome. But when the Numidians attacked, they defended themselves. But that was reason enough for Carthage to be attacked by Rome, and then Rome just annihilated Carthage. The Third Punic War, about 50 years later, annihilated Carthage, and that was the end of Carthage. I mean, everybody who was alive pretty much became a slave. Interesting note, I don't know have you ever heard of Archimedes of Syracuse? He died during the Second Punic War over in Sicily, in Syracuse, when the Romans attacked. Just one of the many people who died during that time. It wasn't necessarily part of the reason because of the Carthaginians, but Rome did attack Sicily during that war, and Archimedes, who was known for a laser to, mythologically, a laser to burn up Roman ships and to pick them up.
Yeah, he was the one who was coming up with all of these futuristic tools of war. Yeah, the one was the claw, or whatever. Yeah.
So that happened during that time.
The Punic Wars are if you've never just read or watched some stuff on it, it's a really fascinating. And it's Scipio versus Hannibal, which is a lot of fun to learn about.
There is a 4-volume edition that you can find, like Penguin Classics, 4-volume edition of Livy's History of Rome, and I want to say his second one, maybe his third one. One of those two is about the war with Hannibal.
Yeah. Well, my This Week in History is October 21st, 1805, one of my favorite periods in world history, the Napoleonic Wars. And this is one of my favorite moments of the Napoleonic Wars, which did not favor Napoleon one bit, actually. This is the Battle of Trafalgar, or Trafalgar, or
I
so
think
many
it's
ways.
Trafalgar.
Yeah.
What do I know?
Yeah, I don't. Zama.
Yeah, I know.
Zama. It could go
It depends.
anywhere.
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to. I've heard Scipio Africanus, and I've heard Scipio Africanus.
Right.
So it
I've
depends.
always heard Scipio, but
Yeah.
hey, you never know. It's not English.
Oh, did you? I know. Did you see? You remember the movie? What was that movie with Russell Crowe, Gladiator?
Yeah.
You remember? Do you remember that the first battle before he revealed himself? That was supposed to be the like the Battle of Carthage.
Yeah, the Battle of Carthage.
Or Battle of Zama or something.
People should know when they're defeated or.
Yeah. Because they're
Would
like,
you?
that's when
Would I?
Commodus.
All right, enough. Let me
right.
get on with my thing. Anyways, we'll be stuck on that all day,
I know.
especially when you start talking about Gladiator, which is my favorite movie,
Good movie.
along with
Hans Zimmer, man, he
Casablanca.
really made the movie even better.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable. All right. So this battle is a sea battle, naval battle between the British and the Franco-Spanish fleet. So this actually took place off of the coast of Trafalgar. So the British fleet was actually outnumbered. So what Napoleon wanted to do was use this combination of the French and Spanish fleets. Like Spain belonged to France at that time because Napoleon was conquering everybody. And so he wanted to actually invade Britain. Well, there was one guy standing in the way. His name was Vice Admiral Lordy Nelson. That was actually a nickname that nobody gave him until just now by me. British.
Lordy.
Look who's Lord Nelson. So the British fleet was actually outnumbered. The enemy had about 30,000 men and 2,632 guns. Britain had about 18,000 men and 2,148 guns. Now, did you know that Santa Anna and Thomas Hardy were part of this battle?
I did not know until I read your notes.
Yeah?
But yeah, no, I did not know
crazy,
that. That's
yeah.
pretty, Santa Anna of all
Santa
people.
Anna of all people.
I
Actually, he
hope
wasn't
he
a person at
died
the
in that
time.
battle.
He was a boat. He was a Spanish ship. And
Did you,
I think
did you hear
that's
what I
sort of-
said? Did you
No,
hear what I said? I said, I hope he died in that battle.
he did.
Well, yeah, it's
And I think that was sort of
1805,
indicative of what was going
Had
to
he-
take place
Had he died,
about 40 years later.
Yeah, had he died, there might not have been a Texas Revolution.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. And Thomas Hardy was actually a flag captain. It wasn't the writer at the time. Anyway,
His writing sucks, so I kind of wish.
don't you ever.
Thomas Hardy?
I love
Dude,
Thomas Hardy.
I read Mayor of Casterbridge.
Yeah. Have you ever read
And I heard
Far from the Okay, you're killing me. This is my moment.
Oh, I'm
All right,
adding
shut up
to
for
it.
a second. Far from the madding crowd. Read that. It'll break your heart, and it's a really good story. Anyways, all right. So did you know? Okay. So Vice Admiral Nelson, Lord Nelson, actually planned. Thank you. Just ignore me for the moment. Had actually planned the attack and ended up splitting the Franco-Spanish fleet in two, which was part of his plan. And it was about a 6-hour battle. At the end of it, a total of 449 British sailors were killed and 1,217 were wounded. But the Franco-Spanish losses were massive. 4,408 dead, 2,545 wounded, and about 20,000 taken prisoner. Now, 449 British sailors were killed. One of those Brits that were killed was Vice Admiral Lord Nelson, which really put just a damper on this massive victory that turned the tide, that really gave Britain ownership of the seas after that for probably for the next, 150 years?
Yeah, end of World War II.
Yeah.
When
And
the
so-
United States pretty much.
It's incredible
reins.
stuff.
Yeah. I always want. I remember hearing.
So that was
reading
October
about
21st, 1805. Yours was October 19th. And another moment in American history, which is pretty significant, it took place October 20th, 1978. And that was my brother's birthday. So happy birthday, Brandon.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something about what was it, the Battle of Leyte Gulf around that time? I don't know.
Don't get me started. I'm not good with dates. Okay, I'm not good with dates, and that's why I'm still single. All right,
wanna
ladies and gentlemen,
say-
that is our this week.
Wait, before you do, I want to, if you get a chance, take a look, and maybe our audience too, but the British have now been singing like Britannia Rule or Rule Britannia. That's, their song that they
Right.
sing, Rule Britannia, Britannia, rule the ways. I wonder was that made up after the Battle of Trafalgar? I'm curious about that.
I guess only one way to find out.
Yeah, I guess we have to read up on that
You
one.
had to Google it.
Yep.
Wikipedia? I don't think so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was our This Week in History. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Donald Crichlow on the podcast today. He is the author of the new book, Revolutionary Monsters. He is also the Katzin Family Professor at Arizona State University. He has written God knows how many books, and that's one of the things that I want to find out. Like, how many freaking books have you written or been a part of? So, without further ado, we've got Donald Crichlow on the line. Donald, how are you doing?
Hey, it's really good to see you guys, and thanks very much for having me on today.
You got it. Now, I got to say, I finished your new book, Revolutionary Monsters. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's a really necessary book. And it's interesting that you sort of point that out in your introduction. You're right at the beginning. You call your book a warning to those beguiled by a siren call of revolution. So what is it that you have seen in your time as a college professor that caused you to write this book? I mean, as a college professor, but just as just a typical citizen.
Well, I wrote the book not as a college professor so much, but as a person concerned about where we're headed in this country. And one of the things that prompted me to write the book is one survey that showed that 52% of our young people support socialism. And that was disturbing enough. And then I saw another poll just shortly afterwards that said that 20% of our young people want to abolish private property and only have state-owned property. So that's what inspired me to write the book. I think these people, our younger people, as well as many Americans, really need a wake-up call about how things could go awry very quickly under a siren song of social equality, and we're going to create the perfect man, the perfect socialist man. So I wrote the book with the intention of really waking up our youth, as well as many Americans, as to the past.
Now, why these 5 particular dictators as opposed to, there's so many that I'm sure people will say, what about Hitler or Pol Pot? One of my favorites is Idi Amin.
Yeah, well, I had a lot to choose from, and I explain in the introduction to this very short and readable book, Revolutionary Monsters, why these 5 men were selected. And they were selected because they were representing 5 different continents. Russia, that is Europe, China, Cuba, that is Latin America, Caribbean, Africa with Mugabe, and then the Middle East with Khomeini. And I think all 5 of these men show a similar pattern in their revolutions. The revolutions begin with bad ideas seeping into the youth and the so-called intelligentsia, and then you get social discord, and you have narcissistic men, such as the 5 I discuss and explore in short chapters, I might add. Very concise history of revolutionaries, how they seize power and create tyranny, police states, and genocide, and crimes against humanity.
You mentioned that your book is short, and it is a short book. It's 177 pages long, but it is thorough. And one of the things that you do point out, and I think justly, is that a place of one of the hotbeds of revolution in these 5 areas, these 5 regions, was in academia, was in the university. What do you see right now that is sort of parallel here in the U.S. as compared to what academia was doing in those 5 regions?
Well, that's a really good question, and thank you for asking it. And all 5 of these monsters, as I described in Revolutionary Monsters, went to university. They were well educated. And it was while in universities that they first encounter bad ideas. So what's going on today? Well, I could tell you a good story that I think is pretty revealing. The other day in one of my classes, we were discussing the differences between a political revolution that brings political change and a social revolution that calls for social equity or equality. And one student, we were talking about the Polish Revolution in 1989, and one student said they had never heard that Poland was communist, and that he had never heard of the Berlin Wall, fall of the Berlin Wall. Yes, and of course he's young, but I didn't blame him. I blame it on an education system that we've created from K through 12 and reinforced by universities that are teaching history primarily through identity. So major events such as the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, he didn't know. So it's not that students aren't being taught history, except they're being taught a very narrow kind of history through a lens of identity, often articulated by teachers and professors with a bias.
You know who I blame for that would have to be Gerald Ford, because in the 1976 presidential debates, he told the audience when he was competing against Jimmy Carter that under a Ford administration, Eastern Europe will never be dominated by the Soviet Union. You're too young to remember that one.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that one.
Well, I watched it, so I wasn't too young for it. I mean, and we're getting a little off track, but Ford's answer was so shocking that Eastern Europe wasn't dominated by the Soviet Union that the commentator of the debates asked him again if that's what he was saying, and Ford proceeded. But I don't think we should blame Gerald Ford for the lack of what's happened in our educational system. I mean, I think what's occurred is that suddenly we've woken up in 2021 after COVID and parents watching what their kids were being taught, kind of a neo-racism in which white privilege was being denounced and our founding principles were being described as systemic racist and so forth. And suddenly parents woke up. But this long march through our institutions, including the media, education, entertainment, and many corporations has been going on for decades now, and suddenly we've awoken to what I would describe as a takeover.
Now, before I go to my question, there's two examples of why I'm even going to ask this. When I was working at this law firm, I walked into a lawyer's office, and he had a huge poster. It was an Andy Warhol painting or print of Mao Zedong, and I was shocked to see it. I believe it was Andy Warhol, if I'm not mistaken, but it was a huge portrait of him. And the other one dealt with Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about how everybody has heard of the Holocaust, but nobody has heard about the gulags and what the Soviets did to the kulaks. And I did spot that in your book. But this is going to lead into my next question: is that in addition to academia, is Western journalism and the media, which includes Hollywood, are they the biggest culprits in protecting the reputations of these dictators and allowing them and their successors, to continue doing what they're doing and continue ruling?
Yes, well, one of the patterns I point out with all of these, in all of these revolutions and all of these monsters, is that when they initially came to power, the press, the Western press, touted them as kind of great men, simple, often simple men, but charming. who really were concerned about making a better society. So, for example, I'll take Mao. Mao was widely depicted in the Western press in the 1930s as kind of a simple peasant, really a Democrat, not really a communist, and an agrarian reformer who was going to undertake reform, ending corruption in China. And if I may add one other example of this, Robert Mugabe, in the chapter I discuss, is described by the Western press as well as by political leaders as the new African leader who's going to bring a new democracy and prosperity to Africa. He showed anyone who knew anything about Zimbabwe, Rhodesia at that point, understood he was a terrorist. He believed in one party rule. And it didn't take very long for him to, once he was in power, to launch a genocidal campaign against a rival tribe in which North Korean trained troops were brought in to burn villages, undertake a systematic starvation of the people, and rape women and kill children. So meanwhile, the Western press ignored what was happening generally in the Mugabe regime, just as they ignored what was happening in China during the Great Famine. Many people denied it, and the same way in Russia with the gulags. Even today, we have people still touting, Bernie Sanders, for example, how Cuba really has great health care. I mean, anyone who knows anything about Cuba understands, like any socialist communist system, the elites have better care. The higher up you go in the party hierarchy, the better care you get. But if you're an average Cuban, you often can't buy common pain relievers at your local pharmacy. So yes, I think the Western press has been quite guilty of misportraying these monsters.
Do you think America and perhaps the rest of the West, are we destined to suffer the same fate as Zimbabwe in terms of, some of the stuff that we're seeing, the comeuppance against the colonists is some of the words that I'm hearing. But based on the current push right now for economic and social reforms, as well as the harsh racial divisions. I mean, I remember hearing, I don't know if her name is Psaki or Saki, whatever, Biden's press secretary, and he said, with COVID, we are going to fundamentally change the economy. So is that where we're headed?
Yeah, well, I don't think we're headed toward Zimbabwe, but what we are seeing is a quiet revolution that's becoming increasingly authoritarian as government begins to exert power against individual rights. And I'm not just talking about the vaccine, the vaccine mandate. I'm talking about something larger. People should be really concerned that the Department of Justice unleashed a politicized FBI to look at parents protesting at school boards to see if they are potential domestic terrorists. Meanwhile, we have those protesters who marched into the Capitol on January 6th being sentenced to prison terms for parading in the Capitol. Now, we can disagree about whatever happened on January 6th. I don't think it was an insurrection. I think it was misplaced emotion with the crowd getting carried away. But to be sentenced to prison for having marched into the to the Congress is something that we should all be concerned with, and I think we should be concerned with the kind of unleashing of federal power that we're seeing.
I think absolutely you're correct on as far as we should all be concerned about what is going on from the DOJ doing what they're doing. The DOJ is playing a major role in all of this. But with all that has happened, especially with this era of COVID, and and you saw it happen across the globe in various countries where, from democracies to outright tyrannies, they were taking more power, and so even the democracies were becoming tyrannical. And do you see that there might, because there's obviously a pushback with this, and you're seeing this in places like Australia, which has become a prison. You've seen it in the UK, where massive crowds are pushing back, and in the US, you see it as well. What is it that possibly gives you hope? And like you said, this has sort of been a silent revolution moving in the wrong way. And now you've seen parents have woken up to what their children are being taught in this silent revolution. So they're pushing back. To an extent, it's almost a counter revolution. And you mentioned counter revolution a lot in your book. How do you decipher what's going on, revolutions, counter revolution, and anything gives you hope and moving forward in the West and almost globally, but in the West?
Well, I do have hope that we're going to see that we're witnessing a backlash against the overextension of government power and what I consider often unlawful measures that are being taken. I just hope revolutionary monsters and the general backlash, my small contribution, isn't too late, and that the backlash isn't too late. We do need to be concerned about voter integrity. Without democracy, without elections, fair elections, elections with integrity, democracy fails. People lose confidence in the elections. So what gives me hope? A couple things. We're seeing parents appearing at school boards, not only in Virginia, but across the country. People are beginning to run for office. I speak to a number of Republican clubs in Arizona, and they're getting huge attendance at their luncheons. They're not coming out to hear me, but they're getting regular attendance. I'm a faculty advisor to the college Republicans at Arizona State, and they're getting 80 and more students, the largest numbers they've ever gotten. So I think people are really anxious about what's happening in this country. On the other hand, we still have many people who think everything's okay. And even though Biden's numbers have dropped, it's surprising how many people think that that the Afghanistan debacle was handled properly, that immigration on our border, in which hundreds of thousands of people are coming across, and crime in our cities, everything seems to be working out okay, and that's how and that's how revolutions succeed, whether they're violent revolutions, as I describe in Revolutionary Monsters, or kind of quiet, silent revolutions led by the administrative state, represented and globalist, backed by corporate leaders and political parties. So they count on people being passive, thinking that things are okay, listening to getting their news from Yahoo and maybe snippets from MSNBC and CNN and so forth. So that's what they count on, is uneducated, unaware people. And this is being reinforced in our educational systems, K through 12, as well as across universities. I mean, I'll just say that I'm one of the few conservatives at the largest state university in the country. I mean, that's pathetic that there's only one or two, three, four people with differing opinions. And unlike my colleagues, who many of them are progressive, some are outright Marxist, and I do not propagandize in my classes by talking about the Constitution, having debates between the Federalists, anti-Federalists, and so forth. I am accused of being the conservative, even though I'm not advocating propagandizing in my courses. That's what we've gotten to in this country and our universities. Parents need to wake up. State legislators need to wake up. Board of Regents need to wake up. We all need to wake up. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a 1984 kind of world.
You know, there are some people who can sit there while their house is on fire as long as the TV's on. It is wild. And that's one of my primary concerns that you bring up, is that the world itself is going to hell in a handbasket. And there are people who are walking around wanting to, got the good vibes shirt, good vibes only shirt. It's just like, only speak positively. I'm like, I can't give you positivity right now. We need to look at the reality of the situation. And it is bizarre and it's scary that discussing the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists is a conservative talking point. It's just like, no, that's an American talking point. That's the basis of who we are and what we are and what we've been. That's a scary thing.
I think we should have some optimism that people are reacting. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say, wasn't the Smithsonian website or one of the websites stated that the Constitution, Declaration of Independence it slapped a warning that it might offend people?
It was the Library of Congress.
It was Library of Congress, who has a little note that you need to be prepared for to be offended. It was like a bad TV show that says about what you're about to witness has graphic sex and violent crime. I mean, so we're getting warnings from Library of Congress to read in the debates that people might be offended by it. I mean, one of the other things you asked how revolutions start. They start with bad ideas, filtering into the young and intellectuals. The other thing that occurs is that the elites, those in power, have lost confidence in their own foundational principles. They have come to realize that their own systems, whether it's in Russia or China or Cuba under Batista, or wherever, are in fact corrupt, and that the elites they're greedy and only concerned about power. And that's kind of what we're experiencing today with our so-called elites, both the political class and the corporate class. People ask me whether these woke corporate capitalists are just responding to pressure from Black Lives Matter and social protests. Black Lives Matter as an organization being Marxist, Antifa is organized along Marxist or Leninist lines. So are the corporations, going along with critical race theory and giving millions of dollars to BLM because they're intimidated, or something else going on? And I would suggest to you that these woke capitalists, especially in technology, about your age, a little older, they've gone through an educational system as well. They are totally woke. Many of them believe that we are systematically racist, that the Constitution was social construction just designed to serve white privilege and to protect slavery. That's what many of them think, and then they're greedy in wanting to trade and get huge contracts with China. I mean, Google sets up a viewing system for China, in which each Chinese person gets a social credit if they're doing the right things for the communist state, or if they have any complaints, then they get a negative social credit, which means they can't travel, they can't buy tickets, they can't get loans. I mean, Google, an American corporation, helped set this up. It's a totalitarian system that they've created, and then we have to hear from Google and Apple about how righteous they are. I mean, it is mind-boggling.
Yeah, we are moving. You mentioned 1984, but we're moving right into the book of Revelation. So it is bizarre. You know, speaking of 1984 and the book of Revelation, those are two books that you didn't write, but my God, you've written so many books. You've been a part of so many books. Final question. One, how many books have you written or been a part of writing or editing? And two, where can people get your new book, Revolutionary Monsters?
Well, let's don't talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. I've written quite a few books. But this book is Revolutionary Monsters, was really written for a younger audience in mind. I really urge grandparents and parents to go out and buy the book. I deliberately wrote it so there are not too many large words, too big of words for younger readers. So the book, you go online. It could be found at through regular publishers. It can be found Amazon. It can be found through Goodreads. It could be found through Barnes and Noble. I had hoped that it said that it's for sale at Target, but I have to say, when I went into Barnes and Noble, my local one, a friend of mine went into his in Kansas, in Topeka, Kansas, the book wasn't there. So maybe it's best to order it online directly from the publisher.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Target, I think Target only allows super hardcore left-leaning books in their book section nowadays. It's wild over there.
Well, that's better than Barnes and Noble. I mean, Barnes and Noble's a little bit better because they allow teddy bears and little trinkets to be sold, as well as coffee. But you don't find a lot of very many serious books in Barnes and Noble bookstores, unfortunately. They have some, but I mean, what we're seeing is that Amazon controls 70% of the book market. That's why your shows, and I want to thank you for your patriotism. It takes a good deal of work, and you have to suffer going to parties in Houston in which you become a target. So let's all stand up and do our little bits that we can to preserve our great and exceptional country.
Totally agreed. Hey, Donald, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for writing this book, Revolutionary Monsters. It's a fantastic read, and it's a very necessary read.
You don't need to thank me. I just try to do my bit to make a better America and preserve our great country.
Thank you.
That's what motivates me. Thank you very much.
I'm going to recommend people read this along with Animal Farm by George Orwell, because they go hand in hand.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hey, have a good day, you guys.
Hey,
Thank
you
you.
too.
You
Take
Keep
care.
up the good work.
I
Bye-bye.
got it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Donald Crichlow. I know I did. Man, just a very thorough discussion on where we are in the country based on the history of, well, I mean, I don't want to, it's not Western civilization because you're dealing with Russia, China, Middle East, Africa.
Yeah.
But it's still the same mentality that's coming through. What did you think about the conversation?
Well, like most of our conversations, I enjoyed it. I was going through his book, and I am reading it, and it does not have a lot of fluff in it. There's a lot of other books with 5 different tyrants. You would expect that this book would be like 700 pages. It's not. It's under 200, which great because I can get the substance.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy talking with him. I mentioned Zimbabwe, and he had a little bit of a differing opinion. He said, "I don't think we're there yet." Okay, it's always good to eat. I don't want him to be a yes man and go, "Well, yeah, great, great question, Alan. It's or great opinion, Alan." I do want to hear what he thought.
Because sometimes your opinions are not that good.
Well, no, those are few and far between. But it's funny because I have discussions about the French Revolution, the Spanish Civil War. Where are we? That type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the Spanish Civil War, that was one of the first. That was actually the first article I ever wrote for the Epic Times. Is America heading towards a Spanish Civil War? Now that's an opinion worth listening to. Anyways, he mentioned something about a party in Houston.
Yeah.
Was that in reference to you?
That was in reference to me.
Did you tell him about that?
I told him about it, yeah. Prior to the discussion. Last week I was at a party. A good friend of mine, I'm not going to mention names here. I've known her for 10 years. I love the girl, great friend. Her friends, on the other hand, they, a diverse group of people in terms of looks, but in terms of opinion, zero. Apparently, they were complaining about me after I had left, stating, he's voted for Trump, or he supports a wall in Mexico that between us and Mexico, and I was like, yeah, what is wrong with that? Well, they were offended. One of them has a mother who lives here, and what, do you want to kick her out? And I'm like going, what? That's like saying, okay, your father is a thief, so if you lock your door, does that mean you hate my father? I'm like, where the hell did that come from? It's like, and she was going on and on about, people just didn't really, they were felt offended by some of my opinions, which I didn't even bring up. I mean, some of them would say something to me, and I would just voice my opinion. And, it's like, that party was a microcosm of what we see in society, because they were telling her after I was gone, they didn't come up and talk to me about what they didn't like. They would go to her like we were still in high school and saying, why are you even friends with that guy?
I think mentally a lot of these people are still in high school.
Yeah.
I'm in a group, it's an organization, and a lot of great people, but I have found, like, their early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. And I'm like, you're out of high school, you're out of freaking college. Why is your mentality still like freshman, sophomore, senior in high school? What is that? Like, you need to grow up.
Well, this book.
And I think one of the other issues is the immediate, like the whole, I'm offended by that. Like, everything is in the immediate. Nothing is ever thought of in the long term. Like, what is the consequences of this particular action? What happens if we don't secure the border? What happens? It doesn't matter. They need in. Okay, I'm not going to argue that they need in, because I think that that's an argument that you would win. They do need in because Haiti and places like that are terrible places to live. So I get the personal need for coming in. But we have to think about what's the long-term effect for the country in which they are coming into.
Right.
And no one talks, well, people don't think along those lines except in certain circles. That is an issue that this country is running into. And I think that's what Donald was really mentioning as well, is these people who are intellectuals, they focus on the youth, they focus on the young who don't even know about the future consequences or the long-term consequences. They don't even know to even ponder those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that he mentions in the book is that First of all, the monsters themselves are learned people. They know their history. They went to university. That's where they formulated much of their opinions.
Right.
But unfortunately for, say, the United States, for much of Europe, and even around the world, they target kids that can become ideologues, that can become activists. They are emotional. I'm sorry, I'm going to offend some people here, but many of them are emotional and they don't know either history or they don't know economics.
Yeah.
So when they're told, that, democratic socialism or, why communism is good, they don't quite understand what it's going to take, what it's going to mean. I read the Communist Manifesto, and it's not a peaceful transition. It even states in there,
Yeah.
it states in there that it has to be done violently.
Correct.
And if you look
and
at
honestly, that is true. If you want a utopia, you have to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because
And
like
which
you were
is-
talking about, I think it was before we started talking, is like we started recording with Donald, was, the left to an extent, they want diversity, but only of features.
Right, not of
physical
opinion,
features,
not of
not of opinion, which means if you want to have just a utopia of perfected man, then you have to kill a ton of people, which is what all these revolutionary monsters did. What all these groups did was, we have to utilize violence because that's the only way to get to utopia, because we got to kill all the people that disagree with us.
You can't have a utopia. You can't have the will of the people if the people are diverse in opinion. And, these dictators all believed that they were four of them believed that they were speaking the will of the people. Well, they kind of were in a way, because they killed off anyone that had a differing opinion. And then the fifth one, the Ayatollah Khomeini, well, he was speaking on behalf of God. So,
you can't beat that.
it's like, listen, Jefferson and Adams, okay? And I'm not talking about what happened in the 1800 election, but prior to the 1800 election, prior to the Alien Sedition Act, Jefferson and Adams had vastly differing opinions, but they were friends,
Right.
and they learned from each other. And the good thing about the Second Continental Congress and then the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787 was that you had a diversity of opinion, so that you could hear from the other side. You could create two wonderful documents that do view things from differing opinions.
Yeah.
So you can't just have one opinion and that's it, which is what I'm seeing a certain party trying to do by bringing in a lot of people into this country and giving them free stuff and giving them this and giving them that, so that they're going to vote Democrat. I'm just going to say it. They're just going to vote Democrat. But let's bring in all these people. Let's get rid of voter integrity. Let's not make sure that you don't have to identify yourself, so that you will now have one power, one
Forever.
one party in power forever, and never ever relinquish that power again.
Exactly. Yeah, you own the elections, you own the country. All right, so pretty brutal conversations, but ones that have to be had. Well, let's rein it in a little bit with our book and movie recommendations. I will go ahead and... Do you want to go, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, you go ahead and go. I'll go.
Okay. All right. Okay, so, well, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, Revolutionary Monsters, and I think you and I are both on the same page to an extent with that. Revolutionary Monsters is, like we said, it's a short book. You can knock this out pretty quickly. It gives, and it's short, but it's thorough. And it gives you, man, there's so many little things that all of these things like added up. One, the starting point was an angry populace. A populace is like, okay, this current administration or government sucks, or regime sucks, so we need to have a change. And it's just like, as justifiable as that stance was, it was like they ushered in something that was way worse, right? All of them. So there was a complaint that happened. And then obviously we were talking about journalists, and in the West and politicians who were just like, oh, this person's great, like Mao and Mugabe and people like that. I'm like, how are you defending these people? And they turned out to be terrible. Academia, these hotbeds for revolution. Know what your kids are teaching. And I think one of the, as terrible as the whole COVID era has been, one of the positives has been that parents have been awoken because all right.
They now see what it is they're being taught.
They now have visually seen what their kids are being taught. So that is a plus. So academia, journalism, and Hollywood and all that. And then, just the complaint or whatever. So you see it happening here because we've got a regime that nobody likes really. And there's been, with Trump, it was turmoil and half the population didn't like him. Obama, half the population didn't like him. It's like the 21st century in politics in the U.S. has been garbage. You've had 4 presidencies and it's like they've gone from bad with Bush, from W to Biden. I mean, I don't even know what in the world's going on in that administration right now, but that's part of the process, as Biden would say. Yeah. But that's part of what Crichlow was talking about. So yeah, book recommendation, Revolutionary Monsters. You can get it online. Have it sent to you. Great read. And actually, I put together it should be coming out. I actually wrote a review for it on the Epic Times, so that should be coming out pretty soon. Now, my movie recommendation, like I said, man, it is October, so one of my favorite movies is The Wolfman. Now, I do like The Wolfman, the black and white version with Lon Chaney. But if you haven't seen this one, this is the one with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. Really good movie. And actually, one of our favorite actresses, Emily Blunt, she is fantastic. She's great in this movie. So if you haven't watched that, it is the month of Halloween. I did go see the new Bond movie. Your sorry self didn't come with me for my 40th birthday, but I did not like the movie.
You did not?
No, I didn't. It felt like a Bond movie at the beginning for a long section, and then there was a really large section that did not feel like a Bond film, and then it got back to being a Bond film, and then the ending was so disappointing. And then also Daniel Craig in his final Bond film, there were moments where you're like, what are you doing? What are you monologuing for? Like, Bond does not monologue. So I was pretty disappointed, and I think a lot of people were. Was it Roger and Ebert? They gave it like 2 stars. So even they were like, it's not that good.
Aren't they dead?
I think it's called still Roger and Ebert or rogerebert.com or whatever, but it's, yeah.
Well, I get all my opinions from the Rotten Tomatoes, so whenever they say something,
whatever they say, if they say Chappelle's new Netflix special is garbage, no, don't watch it. Regardless if 96% of the audience rating,
like that Fauci movie where they gave it a 90%, but the audience gave it 1 or 2%. So
it's such a joke.
Well, they liked the 7th or 8th Star Wars movie, and I'm like,
this is part of it.
Yeah,
this is part of it, ladies and gentlemen. Rotten Tomatoes is part of the process.
Well, like The Last Jedi, the Star Wars Episode 8. Holy God, that Rose just. God, I wish she was killed in that scene. She's responsible for that base being destroyed because of the gun, but she stopped that Finn guy. I was starting to like Finn in that scene, and then she comes in and ruins it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you know what? I was going to say this, but I'm going to pair this with another book, which I mentioned during the interview. Mm-hmm. I'm going to Revolutionary Monsters. You got to get it. But I'm going to pair it with another book. George Orwell's Animal Farm. Yeah. You got to read Animal Farm, and you got to read this. Read them together, because
I think that's a really good idea.
Well, the whole, for instance, we were talking about Biden nowadays, where things are just going to hell. Pete Buttigieg, whatever his name is, the transportation secretary, is on paternity leave, and we've got containers out out in the ocean that are just sitting there because we don't have any means of unloading them. I mean, really?
Wow.
And then you got all the other stuff: Afghanistan, the border, the economy. Anyway, okay, just read this book. I promise you, even if you know it, even if you know the history of, the five guys on here: Fidel Castro of Cuba, you have the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran, you have Vladimir Lenin of the Soviet Union, you have Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, and then you have Mao Zedong of China.
I always wonder why nobody ever called him Bobby Mugabe.
Bobby Mugabe.
I mean, it just rolls off the tongue. Bobby
Probably
Mugabe.
because someone will call you a racist.
Or somebody would just kill you.
Yeah, that
in
too.
those days.
That too. So, I don't know. I've known about Mugabe since 1980 when Rhodesia became Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and then became Zimbabwe. So I've known about him. I knew he was a communist, and his the United Nations always seemed to praise him, and the media always seemed to praise him. Yeah,
trash.
well,
Anyways,
like Ayatollah Khomeini. I mean, the guy, him and his followers and his party and the ruling elite, anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-Semitic, even though I guess they are kind of Semitic, but in terms of the Jewish, anti-Semitic.
anti-Jewish,
Yeah. But yet there was no. I hear people saying, "Oh, Persia has a great." I know Persia has a great history, but that's pre Ayatollahs.
Freaking this.
Yeah. So I mean, I respect the Persian history.
All right, what's your movie?
Anyway, okay, so get this book. Trust me, and give it to your kids. Get them to read it.
Yes.
Along with the 1619 Project by Dr. Mary Grabar and many others.
Debunking the 1619
Yeah,
project.
debunking the 1619 Project by Dr. Mary Grabar.
Yeah.
Movies, okay.
Actually, it may be a good idea to get the 1619 project and debunking and then
Compare
go from there.
them, movies. I know it's based off a book, but I really liked the 1992 version of The Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis, Madeline Stowe, and the other one, Wes Studi. He's been he was in the movie Heat. He was one of Pacino's men.
Okay.
Yeah. He plays Magua, I think.
The Indian guy.
Yeah,
Like,
Magua,
the
I
Native
think is his
American or
name.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one who gets killed.
Well, don't tell people that. I mean, come
It's
on.
1992, man. My gosh, if
Well,
you haven't
maybe-
seen Last of the Mohicans, or at least read the book, what are you doing here?
Yeah, but a lot of people, come on.
I said he got killed.
Well,
There's a number of Native Americans in there. People don't
true.
really have to know if they've not seen Heat. Okay,
All right, but it's
a very good
really
movie.
good movie. And what the funny thing is that I actually visited the areas where they write about, or in this case, the movie, like Fort William Henry, which is like on the very southern end of Lake George. Beautiful. If you ever go to Saratoga, where the Battle of Saratoga took place. You're not far from Lake George. You're not far from Fort Ticonderoga. Go check out those places.
Check it out.
It's
Beautiful.
beautiful, beautiful country.
All right. Well, next week we are going to have Ken Wise of Wise About Texas, the Wise About Texas podcast, and one of our favorite guests and a friend of ours, Dr. Stephen L. Harden. That's going to be a fun episode. Hope you join us. And where can people find us?
They can find us on Facebook. Be sure to like us on Facebook. Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. And YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We got a lot of people on Facebook. We're trying to increase it, get the same numbers in YouTube. So, but we also have our very own website, which is www.thesonsofhistory.com. You can see all our previous videos. You can order mugs, shirts,
We got the blog. So
we got
check
the
out
blog.
some of our stuff.
Got some. We got a lot of stuff, merchandise, and all kinds of things. We still have all our videos on there, don't we? Like
interviews. And stuff.
It's Charles McGee and Dick Cole and many others.
Yeah.
So
There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. We will talk to you later.